On a frosty morning, Simon met a woman, one of the religious fanatics, on the stairs. She solemnly handed him a church candle, a paper icon, and a cross.
Pray, young man. God is merciful, he will hear. Pray.
Simon did not argue with the bigot, took what was offered and thanked her. He threw all the presents into the car and left them there. Returning home in the evening, he saw a child at the door to the entranceway. It seemed to be a girl. Her long, tangled hair was crusted with ice. She was blue from the cold and almost completely naked. Only a carelessly tied dirty sheet hid her body a little. The girl slowly pressed the intercom button, but it rang, and no one answered. A dog barked nearby, and Simon turned around at the sound. But when he turned to the door, the creepy kid was gone. Simon, shaking with fear, entered the entrance. It took him a long time to get the key into the lock. It seemed to him that the child was standing behind him. The neighbor's door opened and the very neighbor who had given him the candle that morning looked out.
Have you seen her?
Who? A startled Simon asked.
Kelly. Did you see her?
The sight of a trembling Simon must have left no doubt, because she opened the door wider, inviting him in.
Come in.
Simon obediently made his way into the kitchen, hung with children's things. It smelled of soup and cat.
Don't make any noise, you'll wake the children.
The neighbor put the kettle on the stove and froze, looking at her guest. Who's Kelly?
They used to build apartments like this for academics. My father got one back then. And in your apartment lived a family of scientists with a little daughter. Her name was Sarah. She was a spoiled little girl. She had everything. Clothes and toys and Barbies, for Christ's sake. And so she grew up without knowing grief. Beautiful, but she didn't know anything about life. She had just turned 18 when God took her parents. They were killed in a car accident. Sarah cried and was sad at first, but then she felt the will and began to change. She was partying and drinking. She dropped out of college, squandered all her parents' savings, started selling things from home. We tried to talk to her to get her to stop living like that. But she just said, I'm an adult, I do what I want. But soon her freedom ended. She got pregnant, not knowing from whom. At first it even seemed to us that everything was getting better. She calmed down, worked as a cleaner in a kindergarten. We helped her as much as we could. In November she gave birth to a baby girl, whom she named Kelly. And after New Year's, Sarah got a boyfriend. They don't drink, they don't make noise. Then we met Sarah on the stairs. Eyes sunken, bruised hands, withdrawal. Her boyfriend got her hooked on drugs. They started having fun again. All the people went to them, kept quiet, hid. I was working as a nurse in a hospital at the time, going on round-the-clock duty. I was coming home from work, and there was a strange rolled-up sheet lying by the front door to the entryway. I opened it, and there lay Kelly, 3 months old, frozen. She was screaming all over the house, disturbing them. They'd left Kelly outside for a minute and forgot to pick her up.
The neighbor's smooth voice trembled. The kettle whistled on the stove, and the woman splashed boiling water into Simon's cup. The clock read 1:30 in the morning.
They were both taken away. I don't know if it was for treatment or prison. We never saw Sarah or her boyfriend again. The apartment was sold by the new owners, but not very quickly. In the winter, we started hearing babies crying under the porch at night. We thought it was our imagination, then spring came and it seemed to go away. But the next winter the baby cried again, but older. And my downstairs neighbor saw a child about 2 years old crawling at the door. A year later, I saw her.
You think that's a dead baby? That's crazy. Simon couldn't bring himself to swallow his tea.
I know it sounds crazy, but it's definitely her, Kelly. I've held her in my arms, fed her myself. Every year she comes back a little older and smarter, and she keeps asking to go home. At first she couldn't open the doors, and last year she was already climbing the stairs. Then we put code locks. It became quieter. She only cries under the door and scratches.
Sighs the neighbor.
We invited a priest, sanctified the house, but she still comes back. She turned 7 this year. Your predecessor was afraid of her. He even installed an intercom, and we only have keys. But Cully must have liked the toy. She used to squeak at night.
Simon didn't remember how he got to his house. His neighbor had told him to be careful not to open the door for her. But he didn't remember all of her advice. He sat in the room with the light on and stared at the broken intercom. The bell rang at the beginning of the 4th. Simon walked to the door. The shattered screen shuddered, silhouettes appearing on it. There was a faint crackle in the receiver, the sound of a distant siren, a dog barking. Then the sound seemed to dissolve into a thick veil, leaving only static and confused whispers.
Let me in.
Simon heard.
Let me in. I'm cold.
Go away, he said in a suddenly hoarse voice, hoping to get rid of the vision or just chase away the fear. The crackling stopped, and the screen went blank. Simon exhaled and was about to stick his head in the shower, but before he reached the bathroom, the intercom beeped again. He sat in the bathroom until morning, wondering what to do. He couldn't tell his friends, much less his girlfriend. They would send him to a mental institution. Simon decided to try to get rid of Kelly on his own. He used priests, candles, amulets, folk magic, and a nightstand propping up the door. Then he put the apartment up for sale. And almost every night, a shuddering whisper came from the broken intercom that penetrated to the marrow of his bones.
Let me in. I'm very cold.
The siege lasted until February, before the heavy snowstorms. On that day it was snowing, huge snowdrifts were piled up, and cars could hardly get through the rubble. Soon spring would come, the world would thaw. Simon hurried home so he could barricade himself an early and turn on the TV. And let Kelly ring the intercom all she wanted. But Simon hadn't noticed that the snow had clogged the grooves of the driveway door, and it was loose against a jamb. Around 3 in the morning, Simon woke up and sat up jerkily. He thought he heard the buzzer of an intercom. But not a regular one, as if it had been opened by someone who knew the code. Simon looked at the front door, where the nightstand was, then at the TV. There was a movie playing. The intercom screen flickered, showing the usual static, which suddenly disappeared, giving way to the girl's inflamed eyes. Simon heard someone scratching at the door, and then a low, whining voice.
Let me in. I'm right outside the door. I'm cold. Let me in.
He ran around the apartment in a panic, screaming for her to go away and leave him alone. Simon opened the window and was about to climb out, but a creaking sound behind him made him freeze. As if in slow motion, he saw the door and the nightstand slowly move aside, and the girl's weak hands appeared in the opening, reaching for him.
Keep me warm. I'm so cold.
She whispered weakly, coming closer. In the morning, Simon was found dead, with severe frostbite. The window in the room was open, and a snow drift had accumulated in the room overnight. His girlfriend Lika confirmed that Simon had been behaving very strangely lately, and a visit to a psychiatrist confirmed his insanity. They say that the apartment is for sale again. It has been renovated and the intercom fixed. And they ask for very little money for it.